From Los Angeles, I'm Eddie Garcia. He's Doug Stolhand. Thanks for joining us for another edition of the Puck Podcast. It's Sunday, December 14th, 2025. This is the first period of a three-period podcast. The first period, which some of you are watching on YouTube, will cover all the news from the past week in the NHL. More Quinn Hughes news, but not if and when he will get traded. Second period will be reviewing all the games from the past week in the NHL, and I mean every game we'll touch on. And in the third period, it's our fan feedback segment where we read listener emails. We'll also have an off-ice report, tell you what's going on in our lives. You can find all three periods on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever you get your podcasts. If you like what you're seeing, just like and subscribe to the YouTube channel as well.
We launched our show back in July of 2006 and have done at least one show every single week since then. We have been the unofficial NHL show of record as we cover all 30, 31, or 32 teams equally. Wherever the biggest story is, that's where we talk about all the coaches' hirings and firings, the moves on and off the ice, the injuries, the goals, the saves, the trades, and everything in between. That's where we always start, and we cover it all here on the Puck Podcast. So you don't miss a thing. If you don't want to pay close attention to the entire league, you just follow your team, but you still want to know what's going on, this is the show to listen to make sure you don't miss anything from around the league every week. And let's start it off with the big news of the week, and that was a Norris Trophy caliber defenseman getting traded mid-season. And let's kick it back over to Eddie Garcia.
All right, thank you, Doug. Well, the last 2 weeks, as part of our headlines, we have talked about Quinn Hughes, with good reason. He is a phenomenal, unique, young defenseman in his prime, and those guys usually are not available. So the buzz around him possibly being traded and where he might land and when it might take place certainly was understandably an interesting topic for a lot of people around the NHL. That said, I did not think that this week's show we would be talking about where he has gone and who he has been traded to. But in fact, that did happen, as you said. Former Norris Trophy winning defenseman Quinn Hughes sent to the Minnesota Wild in exchange for forwards Marco Rossi and Liam Ogren, defenseman Zeev Buium, and a first-round pick in 2026. Rossi's 24, Ogren's 21, Buium's 20. All three players, former first-round draft picks. For Hughes, he's 26, won the Norris in the 2023-24 season, all-time leader in points and assists in Canucks history. He was their current captain as well. He is signed through this season and next season, and then he will become an unrestricted free agent. For Rossi, he's signed for 2 more years. Ogren signed for next season. Buium is signed for next season. And when their contracts are up, they're all restricted free agents. In the second period, we'll be talking about all these players making their debuts with their new teams. But Doug, we did not talk about Minnesota as far as possible destinations. The 2 big teams that were mentioned for the most part, it seemed like, were Detroit and, of course, New Jersey, where his 2 brothers play. But Minnesota is rolling the dice here, and the excitement is palpable in the state of hockey.
Yeah, and if you roll back the show a few weeks, and when we first started talking about this and where he might go, I said the 2 teams that make the most sense were Minnesota and Ottawa, because they were the teams that needed to add a player like this. I said LA also did, but I didn't think they'd trade him within the division. And we were talking about, of course, the obvious interest in Detroit because they need a player like this. Everybody does, but they are near his hometown. The Hughes brothers grew up in Michigan. And, of course, New Jersey was the front runner because that's where his brothers both play. So when you looked at all the moves that he could possibly make, and, of course, when you hear Quinn Hughes is available, then I'm sure all 31 teams at least did their due diligence. And it would be ineptitude of the GM to a dereliction of duty to not at least call Vancouver and see what the price was when a Quinn Hughes becomes available. Because as you said, this is a guy that's in the prime of his career, is signed for another year and a half, and is a Norris Trophy winning defenseman that can immediately improve your team. So if you didn't at least find out what the price was, you're not doing your job as a GM. Now, every team's in a different spot. Some teams cannot afford him financially. Some teams are just entering a rebuild. Others are in a division and maybe not, I don't think Edmonton, Calgary, LA, Seattle really had a chance at him, but you still at least call. Minnesota's offer ultimately is, for the most part, 4 first-round picks, right? You mentioned the 3 players they got are all former first-round picks, 3 of which are in the NHL right now. And then the other one is a future first-round pick, which, if Minnesota has its way, will be 32nd overall. But the only player going to Minnesota is Quinn Hughes for those 4 players. So it is a separation of depth from the Minnesota Wild, but Bill Guerin, who knows the Hughes family because he's the GM of Team USA and has known them for a while, he goes into this eyes wide open, knowing that he may not, there's no guarantee he's going to be able to retain him beyond next season. But he has added a Norris Trophy caliber defenseman for the rest of this season, the playoffs of this season, and all of next season. Or if he decides to do a Mikko Rantanen and gets wind that he can't retain him, he can trade him to recoup some of the investment he just sent to Vancouver. Now, for Vancouver, you say, why would they make this trade? Because it's not going well this year. And they see the writing on the wall that they're probably, I'm sure they've talked to him, and they realize they cannot retain him beyond this contract. So the most value he has is right now, because the team that gets him, it's not a rental. It's a season and a half and 2 full playoffs runs. So there's a lot of, the best value they would get for him was before this year's trade deadline. And the more you play him, the more the risk there is that he gets injured. And if he gets injured, you obviously can't trade him or the value goes significantly down. So they made this move, and I don't think it's the last move Vancouver's going to make to send out some veterans. But as we talked about, he did not have a no trade clause. He did not have to waive anything to pick his team. He could go to any team. And I like the return Vancouver got. It's the team that gets the best player always wins the trade. So that's Minnesota. And obviously they have improved themselves the most. But Vancouver getting 3 quality young players and a first-round draft pick is not nothing. And if half of those players turn into solid NHL players, then they've improved their depth long-term, whereas they were going to lose Quinn Hughes in 18 months. So it's a fascinating trade mid-season. It's an early Christmas Hanukkah present for the Minnesota Wild fans. It is a lump of coal in the stocking of all the Vancouver Canucks fans because their best player, their captain, and their best trade piece is gone. But so is the distraction of when is Quinn Hughes going to be traded? Where is he going to be traded? And that whole mess is now gone, much like last year when they traded JT Miller. So now you've got pieces in place. They're going to be there long term, and you can start building around a new core and a new future in Vancouver.
And the sale job is on for Quinn Hughes. How would you like to be this guy in that place? And basically everyone is going to be kissing your ass for the next year plus, trying to get you to re-sign and stay in Minnesota. Bill Guerin has already started talking about how what a great hockey mind Quinn Hughes is, and he is a hockey. What did he call him? A hockey. I can't remember what the term was he used, but something like a hockey junkie. And there's no better place to be a hockey junkie than the state of Minnesota, where the entire community are hockey junkies and so on and so forth. So it's already started. They're going to try and sell him on Minnesota being a place that he wants to be. And of course, probably his teammates are going to try and sell him and set him up and do whatever he wants. I mean, he can do no wrong in Minnesota. He won't have to pay for a drink or a meal. Everyone will be in love with him, trying to get him to sign long-term. It'll be interesting to see. There are some similarities and then some not similarities as far as like the Mikko Rantanen thing. I think Rantanen was truly shocked that he was traded. Obviously, Quinn Hughes is not shocked. He knew this was coming. Now, where it was going to happen, he may have had an idea or not. I don't know. But you're right. There will be a very interesting time where Minnesota has to make a decision come next year, should he not decide to re-sign at some point between now and then. Where are we in the standings? How close are we to being a Stanley Cup contender? Are we willing to roll the dice and see if we can win it with him? And if we do, maybe he stays, or do we have to move him and not be left kind of holding the bag here. It's a big risk, but it's a very fun risk. If I'm a Wild fan, I'm very excited about this. And look, this is a team that has not made it out of the first round of the playoffs for 10 straight seasons. They've either not made the playoffs or lost in the first round. And when you look at the two monsters ahead of them in the standings, Dallas and Colorado, they had to do something. As you said, when you talked about them as possibly being a landing spot, this was a team that felt like they had to do something like this to get one of those kinds of players in that arms race. And when you look at the defensemen in that central division, Quinn Hughes, Cale Makar, Miro Heiskanen, even Josh Morrissey in Winnipeg is really, really good. I mean, there is some quality defensemen, and that race to win, I think, second place in the Central. I don't think anyone's going to catch Colorado, but and the really crazy thing is Minnesota still might not make it out of the first round of the playoffs because they're going to have to play probably Dallas in the first round, and maybe they're battling the rest of the way to see who gets home ice. But such an interesting trade. I know when I got the text about it, it was a jaw dropper, but really exciting, something fun to talk about for sure. A lot of moving pieces with this.
Yeah, and for Minnesota, I want to make a couple things clear. Quinn Hughes cannot re-sign sign an extension with them until July 1st. So this is not something that is imminent that they can sell him on and he gets caught up in the moment and he's like, wow, I love it here. And he signs right now. You cannot sign an extension until the last year of your contract has begun, which is July 1st. So I think almost counterintuitively, the worst thing that could happen for Minnesota is that they win the cup this year, because then he's had the success and he's got his cup and he's like, now I just want to go play with my brothers and help them get a cup.
I think they'll take that trade-off, though. Should that
They
happen.
will. They will. And especially because they would then be able to trade him and get great return for him, probably to New Jersey or anyone else that wants to borrow him for a year before he goes to New Jersey as a free agent. It'll be interesting to see what happens come July 1st. But the one thing you talked about was what I was thinking of as well in the days after this trade, that Minnesota is in this race in the Central that is extremely top heavy. And in order for them to get to just the conference final, much less the Stanley Cup final, they have to go through Dallas and Colorado. And then one of those three is going to emerge, most likely, to be the conference finalist against whoever comes out of the Pacific. So all the Pacific Division teams, and your team and my team are among them, the Kings and Ducks, the Golden Knights, the Oilers, those teams are all looking at a path to the playoffs or the path to the conference final that involves none of those teams. We don't have to play the Avalanche or the Stars or the Wild. We have to play each other. And one of them is going to emerge to the conference finals against whatever emerges from the Central. So it is still an incredibly brutal path for Minnesota this season. And I don't think they have enough in the tank to pass Dallas or Colorado long-term. They're going to be a very good team. They've played excellent hockey since this last month, since the start of November. And it stands to reason that they will play good hockey now with Quinn Hughes, but they did lose depth in this trade. At forward, Marco Rossi is not nothing. Vancouver got a second-line center once EP40 comes back that they can hopefully build themselves around, and now they have two centers that they can count on. They added a future Quinn Hughes type in Zeev Boehm. I'm not going to say he's a Norris Trophy winner, but he's an offensive-minded defenseman whose defensive game needs help and needs development, but he's only 20 years old. So give him a couple of years of coaching and development and experience, and let's see where he's at. If he's a guy that can get you 60, 70 points a year, run your number one power play, and just is average defensively, you'll take that every time. And Liam Ogren is a young prospect that is just starting his NHL career. He's undersized, but he's got potential. And we've seen time and time again around this league that players sometimes just need a fresh start, need that pressure of being a first-round pick and expected to be the savior removed, and they can blossom into the player that they had, the potential they showed when they got drafted in the first round. And then they've got the first-round pick. So I think Vancouver did very well in this trade. And Minnesota, even though they are improved, obviously, with Quinn Hughes, it's not like this team is now just okay. When's the cup start? This is still a very tough path for them to go to. I still would favor Dallas or Colorado against them in a head-to-head series. So it's an uphill battle for them, but they went in, as you said, it's got to be an exciting time for the Wild because they know their team is all in. They gave Kirill Kaprizov the biggest contract by far in NHL history, and then they went out and traded multiple assets for a guy that can make an impact right now, and he's already has and we'll talk about that in the second period. So it's an exciting time. I'm sure the Quinn Hughes jerseys are going to be selling in Minnesota. As you said, if he gets caught drunk driving, I think the police are just going to give him a ride home and tell him, we'll get your car in the morning. This is a guy that Minnesota is going to do everything they can to make sure he's comfortable. But even if they did everything right, it's still his decision, and he still cannot sign an extension until July 1st. So a lot of work to be done for Minnesota to make this a long-term. And I would ask you, if they do not, if July 1st comes around and they are not in a position to extend him, he's kind of hemming and hawing, let's see. Do you think they trade him during the offseason, or do you think they wait into next year and trade him before the deadline? Or do they just say, screw it, we want 2 playoff runs with this guy?
Well, I think it depends on how successful they are this season to answer that question. But my guess would be, unless he just tells them, like Mikko Rantanen told Carolina, I'm not re-signing with you.
Right.
Then I think they would hold on to him and wait till the trade deadline. But if he says, I'm not going to sign with you, then I could see them trading him before the season started. So
yeah, it's a fascinating trade. I thought Vancouver did well. It's
one of those trades where when you trade somebody like that, you're never going to get equal value. As you said, the best player in the trade, that's usually who wins the trade. And so there's nobody, unless they're trading him for Cale Makar, there's nobody like him in the NHL, with all due respect to the Zach Werenskis and the Miro Heiskins and those kinds of guys. Those are great defensemen, but there's 2 unique puck-moving offensive defensemen in the NHL. They're Quinn Hughes and they're Cale Makar, and that's it. So they're letting go of a very unique player in his prime, and that's always going to hurt. But I thought, under the circumstances, it was not a bad return.
No, and it was obviously the best deal they got. Anybody that thinks they turned down better deals to take this one is fooling themselves. New Jersey was allegedly in on the discussions, as was Detroit. Neither one of them could match this haul. And I don't know what the equivalent of this trade would be for your Kings, Eddie. Like, what would the pieces have to be to match this? Like Brant Clark, Quentin Byfield. I don't even know if you have another player that would fit this description as a third piece and your first round pick. And would you do that?
I would. Yes, I would.
Yeah.
Like I said, he's too unique of a player that just they don't come around often, that
Yeah.
I would trade significantly to be able to get him in his prime, of course, and then pray that he wanted to play in LA. So we'll see. It certainly is in some respects a risk, but I think if you're a Wild fan, you're more than happy to take that risk at this point. We'll see how it works out.
What's unique as well, and I don't think he's going to get to play with all 3 brothers, but what's unique as well this season is that most likely he will play in the Olympics with his brother Jack and get a taste for playing with his brother in the locker room, on the bench, on the same team. And that taste could be intoxicating enough to make him think, man, I could be just 15 months away at that point from doing this full time for the rest of my career and getting paid handsomely to do it. So that may work against Bill Guerin, who is the Team USA GM, in selecting both Hughes brothers.
Well, if you're wondering, would Quinn Hughes return and play in Vancouver this season? The answer is no. They've already done that. Matter of fact, it was I think it was just recently that the Wild played in Vancouver, but there will be a Canucks Wild game in Minnesota that's coming up on April the 2nd. So that'll be an interesting game for sure. Not the only interesting trade of the week, however, the Edmonton Oilers. We know that they have been looking for a goaltender. they made a trade for one. They get Tristan Jarry from the Pittsburgh Penguins, along with forward Samuel Poulin, in exchange for goalie Stuart Skinner, defenseman Brett Kulak, and a second-round pick in 2029. Just looking at the goalies, obviously moving in this one, Jarry had a 9-3-1 record, 2.66 goals against average, and a 909 save percentage. Skinner was 11-8-4, 2.83 goals against average, and an 891 save percentage. One of them made their debut with their new team. The other one has yet to do it. We'll tell you about that coming up in the second period. Your thoughts on this deal for Edmonton to try and upgrade their goaltending position?
Well, they obviously had lost confidence in Stuart Skinner. The fan base lost confidence a while ago. I didn't think the team had lost this much faith in him, but clearly they have, because I don't think this is a huge upgrade on paper, but it is a huge upgrade mentality-wise.
Yep.
It just gives them a fresh start. It was bad vibes in net with Stuart Skinner, and every soft goal, every mistake compounded it and felt like, here we go again. This guy isn't the guy to win us a cup. Tristan Jarry comes in, clean slate. He has not had to face the fans' wrath, and he has not failed this team in the playoffs before. So he's coming in with a clean slate. I think it's renewed confidence. I think he's going to be energized to be behind two of the best players in the world in Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl, just like he was in Pittsburgh. He's been blessed to look out from his crease and see absolute legends of the sport on his team. Sidney Crosby and Evgeny Malkin, obviously, Chris Letang even. So he's going to be very comfortable playing on a team that is offensively gifted, has some star power, and doesn't need him to win games 2-1, 3-2. Just needs him to make the key save at the key time. And if he can do that, he's going to win over the Oilers fans very quickly. If he can't, if he struggles, the risk of this trade for me, for Edmonton, is what option do you have left? You have to go with him. I would be stunned if they made another goalie trade this season. So this is their guy. And if he comes in and struggles because the defense is not sound, Evan Bouchard continues to just turn it over and not give good effort in the defensive zone. There's bad communication and you get a goal against. And I think we saw that in the game tonight. That would be concerning if that is, because now where do you go from here? It wasn't the goalie all along. It was the team defense. And if it struggles, I think it could do more damage to the mentality of the team than the improvement they have right now. So it is a risk for Edmonton. And I'm not saying Tristan Jarry is a bad goalie. I'm just not convinced he's a difference maker, which is, I think, what they need to get over the hump in the playoffs, because they've made it to 2 straight Stanley Cup finals. The goaltending was obviously not holding them back that much. But if they want to get that one step further and win a Stanley Cup in these next 3 years, while Connor McDavid is still under contract, I don't know that Tristan Jarry is the guy to get him over that hump. We will see.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think this is a significant upgrade as far as the talent level. Tristan Jarry was in the AHL for a while last year. He's also had injury issues as well. So that's something to keep in mind. This year, he was playing pretty well. I do think Stuart Skinner became a scapegoat in some respects in Edmonton. He could do no right. I mean, he had a great game and no one cared, but as soon as he let in a bad goal, he's the worst goalie in the world. So I agree with you. It seemed like they needed to get a breath of fresh air at that position. Even if it wasn't a significant upgrade, some kind of change they feel likely will help. But they get rid of a defenseman in Brett Kulak that they didn't want to get rid of, but they had to make this deal. And their defense isn't very good right now. And now you lose another defenseman.
Right. It wasn't good to begin with.
Right.
And now you're one. Yeah. But that's something that they have time to address. But you're absolutely right. That is a big part of this trade.
So we shall see. I understand why they did it. And I think it's a slight upgrade talent-wise, potentially, at least for this year. But I understand why they did it. I don't know that this is going to be the magic elixir that they hope it is. We'll see.
You mentioned he had become a scapegoat. Every team has one of those guys, right? Every team has a guy that when he has a good game, fans don't say anything. And when he has a bad game, fans are all over him and saying, we got to get rid of this guy immediately. And Stuart Skinner had become that guy for the Oilers. The whole team was not playing well. And we've talked about it for 2 months now that this team doesn't look quite right. But he was the guy that they said, we need a new goalie. We need a new goalie. Was this the guy they were thinking? We really need what the Penguin, like you said, a guy that was in the AHL last year. That's the guy you needed. We'll see. I'm not convinced. And I think Tristan Jarry, there's a little bit of pressure to get off to a good start. I do have a question for you, though. Did you see if those two teams play again this season? Because that would be a spicy matchup for Stuart Skinner to stick it to his old team.
Not only do they play again this season, as people are probably watching and listening to this, they would play tomorrow. They play on Tuesday in Pittsburgh. It would be very juicy.
Oh, my.
If it were Stuart Skinner against Tristan Jarry. However, did I say Stuart Skinner?
Yeah.
That's right. However, Stuart Skinner apparently is having visa issues. Has not joined the Penguins yet. So hopefully they can get that straightened out. That would be very, very juicy to see that matchup for sure.
You and I have talked about this in the past. It is baffling to us that the NHL does not have some sort of an agreement with the State Department of both Canada and the United States that players are pre-cleared to travel and be traded in season so that this is not an issue, because there are enough teams, 7 teams north of the border, that when you've got 25% of the league, chances that guys are going to be changing country of employment is 25% when they change teams mid-season. So having this be a problem is baffling to me.
Let's get to the ER report. We had some unfortunate injuries this week, including Utah Mammoth leading scorer Logan Cooley. He's going to be out 8 weeks with a lower body injury. Remember, he dodged a bullet. We thought he took a knee-on-knee hit against St. Louis. They ended up saying it was like a quad contusion. Well, unfortunately, he collided with something else this past week. It was the post in a game, and that didn't work out so well. So Logan Cooley, lower body injury, is out 8 weeks for Utah. That is a significant loss for them.
Yes, it is. And this is a team that is already fighting to stay in the playoff race in the Central Division. Losing him for 2 months, basically until the Olympic break, is brutal, because granted, he will have extra time during the Olympic break to get healed, but there may not be much to play for if they are not able to withstand this loss for the next 8 weeks.
Connor Bedard is currently injured. We don't know how long he'll be out. He did not play over the weekend against Detroit, and he will not be on their 3-game road trip through Eastern Canada for the Chicago Blackhawks. He was taking a face-off against the St. Louis Blues. It was less than a second to play. He gets tied up with Braden Shen, who then kind of shoves him, and Bedard immediately grabbed his right shoulder and screamed in pain, went right off the ice and into the locker room. A bizarre freak injury, as it was called by his head coach, Jeff Blashill. Again, don't know what it is. Clearly, it's a shoulder issue of some sort.
I was going to say, I'm not a doctor, but if they said upper body, I would say right shoulder.
Yeah. So don't know how long he's going to be out. Don't know any details on it, but right shoulder injury, and will be out at least this coming week for Chicago.
Yeah, and they've been struggling in recent weeks, even with Bedard. Without him, this team gets a lot less dangerous on the rush. I know Tyler Bertuzzi's had a great season, but a lot of that is because Connor Bedard is having a great season. He's getting assists on Bedard's goals and getting goals off Bedard's assists. So that is a huge loss for Chicago, who, much like Utah, was already struggling to get back in this playoff race. And this is good news for a Winnipeg Jets team that is in a fight with those teams. And we have an injury update on them as well. But that's good news for them, that both Chicago and Utah are going to be without key forwards for at least a week, and up to 8 weeks for Utah.
Yeah, and for Winnipeg, what you're talking about, good news as far as a big player coming back from injury for them. Victor Hedman of the Tampa Bay Lightning, the defenseman, is going to have elbow surgery. This is a re-aggravation of an injury that caused him to miss 12 weeks earlier this season, and he will be out until February, according to Tampa Bay.
You
We
wonder about the Olympics for him. If he's out
yeah.
until February, and he's obviously going to be on Team Sweden if he was healthy. If I'm Tampa Bay, I tell him, I'm sorry, but your Olympics are over. We're not letting you unless you return to our lineup before the Olympics. We're not letting you go and play in those games first. As much as that sucks, we're trying to win a cup here, and we
Yeah.
need you for our second half.
I hear what you're saying. I doubt they'll say that to him, though. I don't believe that they would say that to him, but we shall see. And by the
I would
way,
say it now to motivate him to get back before the Olympics.
but bringing up the Olympics, Connor Bedard is a huge member potentially of the Canadian team. That's a huge talking point in Canada. Is he going to be picked for the Olympic team or not? This obviously could affect that as well. We'll see.
Yeah, but unlike Team Sweden on defense, Canada
Yes.
will be fine.
Yes, it's true.
They are about 20 deep at center, so I'm not worried about them.
We talked about the Oilers' issues on the blue line. They put defenseman Jake Wallman on long-term injured reserve. Also, forward Jack Roslovic on IR.
Roslovic has been good for him. That's a guy that you and I could not understand why no team was interested in signing him in the offseason. It may have been simply him waiting for an opportunity that he thought, I want to win a cup. I'm looking for a team that has a chance to win a cup rather than just any contract.
I think so.
So he got that opportunity. He's been a good fit for them. So that's a tough loss for them as well.
Seattle forward Jared McCann is out 3 weeks, lower body injury. Blues forward Jordan Kyrou is week to week. Islanders leading scorer Bo Horvat week to week with a lower body injury. Canucks forward Elias Pettersson is on injured reserve. Wild put forward Matt Zuccarello and defenseman Jake Middleton on IR. Sabres put goalie Colton Ellis on injured reserve. Devils defenseman Simone Nemitz out indefinitely, got injured in practice. What is it with the Devils and getting hurt in kind of unusual places?
Well, unusual locations, not unusual places.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Timo Meier, also for New Jersey, has taken a leave of absence from the team for personal reasons.
Yeah, I watched the Ducks play the Devils this past weekend, and it was it felt like a preseason game because there were a few recognizable names. And there were a lot of guys that I had never heard of before on that Devils roster. They are really going through it injury-wise. And you mentioned the Elias Pettersson injury. We want to clarify it's the forward version of Elias Pettersson for Vancouver.
It's the one that's
the one you know about that means, but it has also meant that Marco Rossi stepped into the number one center job in Vancouver when he arrived in town.
As far as signings, roster moves, or trades, the St. Louis Blues signed former Cup winner Robbie Fabry to a contract for the rest of the season. Scored a goal the other day in his return to the team. Oilers acquired defenseman Spencer Stastny from the Nashville Predators for a third-round pick in 2027. So there's Edmonton trying to find some help on the blue line.
Yeah, just a warm body when you lose Wallman and Kulak, and you didn't have a lot of depth to begin with. They just need defensemen.
And the Pittsburgh Penguins, maybe this is somebody that Edmonton will pick up, put defenseman Matt Dumba on waivers.
I don't think they can afford him. I think he's got a significant contract. And so I think Pittsburgh did that knowing nobody's going to take him at that price.
Law and Order report, Maple Leafs forward Bobby McCann was suspended for 1 game for high-sticking Tampa Bay's Oliver Bjorkstrand. We did have a couple of random shots to close it out. I did see that Darren Dreger posted a video on social media of the rink in Italy as we check in with that developing story, and just showed a video of the construction going on. It looked, I don't know if you saw the video or not, but it looked like, wow, there is still a lot of work to be done on this place. I was a little surprised. I know they claim it's going to be done, and it probably will be. But I was kind of like, whoa, they really still do have a lot of work to do on that place.
So let me know if I saw the right video, because who knows with AI and the internet these days.
That's true.
What I saw, the building itself is not complete. There was an open side to the building. Is that correct?
Yes. There's significant areas of the building that are still being constructed.
Yeah,
this isn't like the building's built and they're just doing all the
inside
work.
Yeah.
It's like still being built.
Right. So if I was the NHL and I said, let's fly over to Italy on the old company dime here and stay at a 5-star hotel and go check out the rink, and I showed up to the rink, I think I was being punked. I'd be like, this is not where we're going to be playing in 2 months. This building is far from complete. And you're telling me you're not only going to enclose the rest of the rink, the plumbing is going to be up to specs, the electrical is going to be up to specs, all the facilities that our players are going to use are going to be up to specs. I would be extremely dubious if I was them. And I would be sharing that video to all the players and saying, if we have to cancel the Olympic participation for our players, just know that we're not being capricious with this. This is a legitimate safety concern. Look at this rink. I mean, it was shocking to me as well. The video I saw was shocking.
I know, I can't remember which one it was. Maybe you heard this. One of the Kachuk brothers said, we'll play it in a parking lot if there's an ice surface there. We don't care about the rest of it. But the ice does have to be in good condition because you don't want to risk any injury, of course. And it's about more than that, unfortunately. It's not just, there is ticket sales and all that kind of stuff to go along with it. I did hear on the 32 Thoughts podcast, the Elliot Friedman thing that I listened to, that it is not an NHL decision to move to another arena. It's an IOC decision. They can't decide to move the event to another place. Like we talked about plan B. Yeah. There's no plan B because it's not their decision. They can't do it. So it's either they are going to play in that place or they're not going to play at all.
So well, you're telling me the IOC doesn't have a plan B?
They're according to what I heard in the interview, they will not move it. It's going to be there or it's going to be nowhere.
Or they just canceled the hockey.
Well, they believe it. They believe it will be fixed.
I understand what they believe, but let's say it's a month from now and we're still looking at something that is not close to being ready for games, and we're now 2 weeks away from games. The women's game starts on February 5th, I believe. That's not that far away. That's like 7 weeks away from now. That building looked further than 7 weeks away from completion, in my opinion.
They say it's going to go down to the wire, and I believe that. But judging by the video that I saw,
I mean, this reminds me of the ending of Gung Ho, the movie in the 80s with Michael Keaton, where they were trying to build a car to prove they could, and the CEOs and all the people showed up to see the car they had built. And Michael Keaton says, I'm going to drive this car home. And it looks like a great car until he goes to drive it and it fell apart around him. That's what this feels like to me. Like they're going to be driving in the last rivets and all that at the last minute. And the first time we see the lights come on, maybe the first time the lights come on. It was surprisingly incomplete.
There's supposed to be a test event like a week before the games, and it's supposed to, from what I heard, they're supposed to do that like a year ahead, and they're doing it like a week ahead of time. So obviously that test will be quite important to see if it works out. So,
but I also wonder if that's just a rubber stamp at that point. We can't afford to not have this, so it's fascinating.
Yeah. One other note, Dylan Dubé has signed a tryout with the St. Louis Blues AHL affiliate. You may remember he was a part of the Hockey Canada scandal, acquitted of the sexual assault charges, and he was the final player of the 5 players that had not joined a team. At that point, he was the last one, and now he has joined a team, getting a tryout. I think it's Springfield, I believe, the St. Louis Blues AHL affiliate.
Springfield Isotopes?
I don't think it's that. No, I don't think it's something else. Springfield Falcons or something like that.
I mean, they need to pay the Simpsons people enough, whatever it is.
I think there's a minor league baseball team. At least there was at one point a minor league baseball team that was the Isotopes.
That's fantastic. That jersey would be very popular, I would think, if as a hockey jersey. But I mean, look, as we talked about when he got acquitted, and all 5 of them got acquitted. If they're not guilty of anything, then there's no reason for them not to be able to continue their career. So I'm glad all 5 have now gotten contracts to resume their career, so that that incident and accusation was not the end of their hockey careers. All 5 have continued on with their careers after that.
I guess I'm not surprised by this, but I did click on the link that I saw about him being signed, and it did not mention anything about the Hockey Canada incident.
Was it from
Yes, it was from the
team?
team. It was from the
Yeah.
team. Yeah, they didn't.
You might remember him as being accused of rape.
Well, they
Hi,
don't.
hi, I'm Springfield Falcons defenseman Dylan Dubé. You might remember me from such things as the Hockey Canada sexual assault case.
Like I said, I understand why, but it was still, pretty interesting that it's like, we're not going to mention this. If you
No.
know, you know, but we're not going to tell you about it.
Well, I will say to their credit, I guess, in reflection, the Ducks were very open about Joel Quenneville's past when they announced him as the head coach. It was part of the press conference it was not ducked. Hey, we're not talking about the past. It wasn't the Bill Wirtz BS or Rocky Wirtz where he was yelling at that. What's done is done. The guy had just been fired. So the Ducks were very open about it. I'm sure the Oilers were as well when Stan Bowman got hired. I wasn't there and I don't follow them close enough to remember that press conference, and I think the Golden Knights were pretty upfront about it as far as making him available for discussion on that stuff. It's not an off topic, but yeah, I can see why they would not bring it up.
Anything else from the hockey world that maybe I didn't mention here as far as news of note from the past week that you want to share with anybody?
We got a lot to get to in the second.
We do.
Period, so let's
we definitely do. All right. Well, that'll do it for our first period of the YouTube show. If you enjoyed what you are hearing and seeing, we have 2 more periods of a podcast for you to check out. If you don't know about that, go to Apple Podcasts, search Puck Podcast, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast, and you can listen to the remaining 2 periods. If you're already listening to the podcast, second and third periods are coming right up. We're going to recap the entire week in the NHL, including the debut of Quinn Hughes in Minnesota and more. So if you're watching on YouTube, we're signing off now. I'm Eddie Garcia. He's Doug Stolhand. And we'll talk to you next time with another edition of the Puck Podcast.